It's good to be here. We'll do a roll call. Zone 1.
Present.
Zone 2. Here. Zone 3. Here. Zone 4.
Yes, sir.
Also present are the city administrator, the city attorney, and the deputy administrator, and numerous other people. Thank you all for being here this evening. Is there a pastor here who would like to say grace or open the roll, open the meeting? Hearing none, I will do it myself. Please rise for the prayer and pledge of allegiance. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather to do the work of this city. We ask that all here acknowledge the solemnity and purpose of it all, the importance of it all, that we give our all to it, as I know so many here have. And we thank everyone here for that. Thank you for getting us through this past storm and help us to clean up the mess in good spirits and with thankfulness and love for our neighbors. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is approval of minutes. Anybody have any changes that you can make to minutes as presented? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved as presented. Thank you. Now, next on the agenda is adjourn, sine die, but I'm going to take a minute of my own to thank everyone who participated in this past election cycle. Those who ran, those who prevailed, those who did not, everybody here, everybody in that group deserves praise and thanks from the city. It's no small thing to put yourself on the line here. And I want to say thank you very much to Jim for the work that we have done side by side here over this past year. I very much appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. As you said, getting to know you better, even though you're my just down the street neighbor, I've gotten to know you a lot better through this process, and it's been a pleasure. It truly has. And enough about me. I offer you the floor for a moment, sir.
Thanks. I promise you guys, I won't take more than about a half hour here. So, Sue and I, my bride, and I started this 6 years ago together. We're going to end this together. So it's been my honor and pleasure to serve this city and serve this commission for 6 years. And with that, I wish this city and I wish this commission well going forward. And I'm adios and out the door, y'all. Bye. Hey, good luck, y'all. It's going to be fun. I know. Melissa Park done. That's my commercial. That's my commercial. Oh, look at that. I got my Jim Collins vice mayor goes in my garage. See ya. Please, see y'all. All right, guys. See you around town. All right, brother. Y'all enjoy your night. See y'all.
Hey.
Good work.
No, fuck you.
What the hell?
Whoa.
What did you did to me outside my house?
What did I do to you outside your house? Oh my word!
That was so uncalled for.
My word! This is the level of politics, y'all. You want this? You got it. I'm going home.
Yeah.
I'm not going home right now, man. I'm gonna wait till this all goes away.
I cannot believe this. This is what you people whining like that.
Easy. That was
uncalled for.
Man, that was just low. Wow, man.
I'm sorry.
Chairman.
I don't know anything about
Dude.
I'm so sorry.
Wow.
I'm so sorry.
Wow.
Okay, sir. Good.
I'm good, yeah, man. I'm just a little disappointed by it all. I mean, it's disappointing, it's hurtful. It does no good here for the city of Lake I mean, that was just flat embarrassing. It was lack of, it was no, golly, Bill. My word. Now, I'm gonna go out this way. I'm gonna go out the way I always go out. See you guys. Hey, that's a testament, y'all. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if I can get your attention again, back into the meeting. We have not yet adjourned. If I could have your attention, please. I know it's not easy to be quiet now, but I would ask you to. Now's the time on the agenda where we adjourn and swear in new commissioners. I'm going to take a minute just to hopefully calm the room a little and say a couple of words. I had not planned, so if I say anything wrong, I'm sorry. But there is consequences to the negativity that happens in the city. It boils up, it boils over. I don't know what any of that was about, I really don't. But the nature of things seems to lend itself to that. And it's easy to tear things down, it's easy to sit back and kibitz and say bad things about people in service to the city. It's awfully easy. I'm not saying any of you have done that. I'm just saying it's awfully easy, and many people have. And it does tear people up. You're allowed to say anything you want. It's not, I mean, I'm not telling people to shut up. I'm just asking people to raise the level of discourse, to raise the level of respect. Everything we need to know about how to be neighbors and be in this process, we should have learned in kindergarten, honestly. But hopefully, calmer heads, calmer hearts will prevail. And at this time, unfortunately, it is time to adjourn, sign, and die, and swear in our new commissioner. We are adjourned. Ms. Bishop, would you come forward to be sworn in? take any pictures or anything? I'll give you a little minute if you want. No? Okay.
I'm so shocked. I'm good.
Now let's swear in Mr. Sorry.
I, Roger Eckert, do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida against all enemies, domestic or foreign, and that I will bear true faith, loyalty, and allegiance to the same, and that I am entitled to hold office under the Constitution, that I will faithfully perform all duties of the office of Commissioner of the City of Lake, on which I am about to enter. So help God.
30 years ago.
I just wanted to shake Robert's hand and then, so stay down here. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take about a 10-minute recess. We have to celebrate this occasion, believe it or not. Right now it doesn't seem quite that way, but we do. This is a celebratory occasion, and we brought some treats for you all, and we'll see you at about 9:25. 7:25, excuse me.
She was so shaken. She couldn't stand up.
I'm going to try to get some snacks.
That's not a fish, this is nice. She's congratulations on
Just do everything you can. Act like you didn't have someone else. What about your mother?
Talking about that's a shame. Good to see you too.
How have you been? Good to see you. Sorry I didn't get with you, man. Just too much on my plate.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind.
Sometimes it's probably best not to attack those people. He just tear the scab off.
Yeah, that sleeping dog can just lie. Because I was going to suggest maybe he was so off base. And
I read a lot of his other articles, and they're just equally as.
Oh, yeah. He's just anti-government. He's got it all.
And that's one of the main reasons why. And then I try to dig it into things. Except for you. You never get opposed. Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, call to order this second, I guess, City Commission meeting for the evening at 8, well, I can't even read that clock, but it's 7:27. And it's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to welcome Charlene Bishop to the dais. Thank you for being here. I would like to take a moment and give Mr. Sniffen an opportunity to say a few words, if you could, just out of respect for people who put their hat in the ring, you could approach there. Because we do appreciate it, and we appreciate your effort.
Well, I'd like to first off say thank you for inviting me up here. And Lee gave me the phone call and asked if I would want to say a few words. I said absolutely. Roger, thank you very much for running a clean race, a positive race, which goes a long way to say about your character and my character as well. You made a comment to me at the, when we wait for the poll results, and you said to hold you accountable. Guess what? It's on, all right? And I will hold you accountable because you told me to hold you accountable. And that goes for the rest of you up there. I've only been in the city for 2 years, and I love this city. I love the neighborhood that I live in. I've come to know quite a few of you in the last 6 months, and I can say that not one of us are perfect. You know, we are perfectly imperfect in the eyes of God, and that's how I see things. But I will be holding you all accountable. There's a lot of things on this agenda that I'm really going to be holding you all accountable on because I have a lot of questions, and the only way we're going to get the right answers is to get that. Going forward, I would like to see more transparency from this dais. You know, none of these ad hoc meetings, you know, a group of people getting together, decide on how certain things are going to be done. Okay, I think that should be brought into the public's eye from the beginning, so other people can participate, not just a handful of people. So with that being said, God bless each one of you. God put you in this place at this particular time because He's the only one that decides who our leaders are. So going forward, God bless you all. Good job. Charlene, you did it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner Eckert, would you like to say a few words? Welcome to dais once again for another 2 years.
I thank all the citizens that put their trust in me to re-elect me to the position. And like I told Kurt, to make sure we are accountable for our actions and we hold the citizens in the city into our utmost regard.
Thank you, and welcome. And Ms. Bishop, over to you.
I'd just like to say thank you to everyone that supported me. It was actually overwhelming and humbling how many did, and I appreciate that. And I'm going to do my utmost best to make you proud of supporting me. So,
Thank you and welcome. Welcome to dais. And roll call, Zone 1.
Present.
Zone 2.
President.
Zone 3. Zone 4. All right,
Pull the mic closer.
yeah, point that toward you so people are.
I didn't think I was going to need it.
No, you always do. For the people at home, it is helpful. Now we need to appoint a vice mayor. Typically that is the person with the most seniority. Mr. Basso, would you be willing to become vice mayor? If this is done by vote of the commission?
You need to vote on it.
Is there any discussion?
Do you need a motion or just an appointment?
A motion to approve.
Go for it.
I make a motion that we, or to nominate Rick Basso as vice chair, or vice mayor? Vice mayor of the city of Lake Helen.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Then a motion by Commissioner Eckert, a second by Commissioner Bishop. Please do it about a month, or two. To appoint Commissioner Basso as vice mayor for the next 2 years. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Oh, aye. Mr. Vice Mayor, if you would like to say a few words, you may.
Yeah, can you do your best not to get stuck on the side of the highway anymore?
I'll do my best. Are there any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move forward. Consent agenda, acceptance of paid bills, etc. Is there a motion, or is there anything that needs to be pulled out of the consent agenda and discussed?
I do have a couple of questions. You've already asked them, but I just wanted to ask them in open meeting. The social media archiving subscription, we've already talked about that. It's a yearly charge, but if you don't mind, city administrator or deputy, to explain the $3,000 to that.
Explain the social media
Archiving subscription.
As you know, the Sunshine Law requires, the Government Records Law requires that everything that is said at meetings or transmitted by a commissioner, by email or by social media, on messaging, needs to be recorded in posterity. We contract with a company that gathers that all together on a virtual basis, and then stores it so it's always accessible to the city clerk so that she can pull it up on a records request. So it is one of the things we do to stay within the confines of the state law, but also comes in handy, quite frankly, from time to time as well. So.
And if we were to eventually have a city page, will there be an additional fee?
I don't know. No additional fee.
Thanks.
I just learned that myself.
Okay. Any additional discussion?
I do have one question about one of the bills.
Okay.
I was wondering why one of the hurricane cleanup monitors got paid so much more than the other ones did.
All of the hurricane monitors are paid $17 an hour, but they had various assignments. Some of them simply were monitors. Some of them also did truck registrations in addition to that. Some of them did monitoring on the second pickup as well as the first pickup. So that's just an accumulation of more hours.
Okay.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second. Second. I have a motion from Commissioner Rutledge, a second from Vice Mayor Basto to accept the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Like sign. Motion carries. Old business, presentation and discussion on the third iteration of Melissa Park, Concept Plan 3.0. Over to our city administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. 3.0 denotes the fact that we now have before you tonight, and it did arrive late, and I apologize, the third iteration of the Melissa Park design plan. The first iteration was performed by the staff, taken to a group of citizens called for the purpose of reviewing that plan. We had approximately 30 people in attendance in the conference room downstairs. There were a number of changes suggested to that particular plan that resulted in the second iteration, which is sitting on the floor over here. But again, there were comments from that, and from that, the commission asked me to produce the third iteration, which you have in front of you tonight. And basically, it is again the building with a deck. It is the the basketball court and the playground. It also includes the wall on the far right side, and we have that for discussion this evening. Again, the whole purpose of all of these is to ultimately come to the point when you are ready to authorize that we go out for bids. There are two projects that are using CDBG funds, and they need to show steady progress in order to be able to keep those funds. One is the playground, that's the oldest, the first one. The next one, which is the next oldest one, is for the basketball court and related equipment. So at some point, I'm trying to nicely say that we have to stop planning and need to start pulling the trigger on bids so we can keep that CDBG grant alive.
It was my understanding at the end of the last meeting that the commission had asked you to go ahead and prepare this and send it out to bid, basically. And then some additional things started happening. Where are we in that process? Are we ready to go to that?
We are ready to go out to bid. And matter of fact, we have dates already set up for that. As you know, there was a group of citizens, I understand perhaps 8, I don't know how many people, that did meet at Melissa Park in an informal basis and wanted to make additional suggestions and changes primarily to the building, not necessarily to the layout. I did send you the costs that were estimated for the plan changes. But the building that you had asked us to go forward with the deck and the screen enclosure, had a price tag of approximately $41,000. The changes that were suggested at that particular meeting, which was not an official meeting of the city, was approximately $262,000. Which, if you'd like to consider that, I would suggest that it be the third CDBG grant, which again will probably be $60,000, so it'll still be woefully short of the funding necessary for that project. But there is no earmarked money for anything of that magnitude right now. We are prepared to go forward, as I said, with the playground and the tennis court. I don't know why I keep calling it tennis court. Basketball. We're ready to go for those. And again, as I said, we need to show progress to the CBG people so they don't think we're sitting on the project.
Mr. Director?
If you go back to my motion I made at the last meeting, it included the building, the patio, the basketball court, and the playground. And the wall was separated out as a separate venture that's being done by a citizens group.
You're absolutely correct. We have had a citizen volunteer to donate to that, and I've asked them to quantify and describe their donation, and I have not yet heard back from them. It's the same process I suggested we use for the legacy group that is building the Royal Park Pavilion. They'll raise the funds, donate them to the city. We do the design and the construction, but I've not been able to formalize that agreement, is what I'm trying to say yet. But the plan is there for that wall in the design you see at 3.0.
They're working on it. It's going to take a little bit of time to get it to they're working on it.
Well, fortunately, it is a separate event.
Right.
Yeah. So
in that thing, when we had the meeting out there in Melissa Park, there was a lot of misunderstanding on what the people were asking for originally for that park. And when they were talking about expanding the building to the outside, and somebody said, you're talking about a screened enclosure, and they immediately said yes. Well, it ended up not being what they wanted. They wanted to make the meeting room larger. And in that, they invited Mr. Morales to come out and explain some of the ins and outs and everything of it. In the process, they came up with other changes. There's about $60,000 on that 200 and something thousand that were changed and eliminated by simply putting a counter on the inside instead of extending the wall and doing all the electrical and plumbing. So the extension of the building adding about 20 to 25 feet to the west, and then upgrading the AC, because the AC is so old and it barely keeps what's there cool as it is. The patio would be slightly modified and be a little bit smaller. No underspace underneath it. It would have to be a back-filled patio because they don't want anybody living underneath the patio. So Mr. Morales would really need to get with you and show you the building design and what they were looking for on the inside. And some of the work they've got that the people would be willing to build the counter on the inside, which is a simple, just a low counter type area to separate the kitchen from the meeting room. So if you could do that before you go out for a bid and get with him and go through all those things to see his drawings and what he showed the people, it would be a lot easier to add that to this plan to show the people what it is.
If I may chime in.
In your own words, you said that this is the most leased or rented facility in Lake Helen. So it needs to be brought up to par to keep for what the people need to be able to do their programs there.
It is.
My first thought is, I appreciate all that and all the work you've been doing towards this. Would it be, you said before we send these others out to bid, you'd like to finalize all of this? It seems like we could send these other parts out to bid. I don't think this would be difficult to carve out.
And playground and the basketball court go out to bid.
Okay,
So this building needs to be some modification.
They have a time frame that's critical.
yeah, so it is still the consensus of the commission, if I may ask for that, that we proceed on the basketball court and the, what was the other thing?
That playground.
Playground, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But is that, anybody have any objection to that? We move forward with those?
Does that include the parking spaces?
Yes, I do, would include the parking space.
They were not worried about changing the parking space at this time, as that can be a future thing, what they have there, they can.
I think because of the grading that will be required in the road and the parking and the courts and the playground, there's going to be a lot of grading involved. I think it probably makes sense to keep the road as part of that, the parking spaces in the road as part of that.
We did change the road covering from asphalt to a high-grade millings.
Based on the last discussion last meeting.
The last discussion, correct.
My question is, could we add an ADA space or handicap parking down by the playground so that folks with disabled children that need that extra space to get in and out there, I can't think of what it's called, the crisscross pattern there, they would be able to access it easily.
Yes, we have a number of spaces, and the law requires a certain percentage of your spaces be handicap accessible. So those can easily be converted, both the northern and the southern route. We have sidewalks to connect everything, also for handicap accessibility. So that, whatever we do with CPG funds has to be handicap accessible. So
That really does need to be part of this, I'm sorry.
Well, what I was wondering is we have two up by the building. I'm sure that makes sense because the building gets used a lot, but we also have one down by the pavilion.
let's just call that a Scrivener's error, because it would have to be there. Yeah, we'd have to have those.
Okay.
And this is done by a very nice artist, but not necessarily a playground planner, so these things will all be incorporated automatically.
Thank you.
Mr. Pastor,
2 points. One, I'm a huge fan of a complete overview of everything so we know where we're going, what we're doing. Even if we don't have the funding available to do it, at least we have an idea of the finished product. The second one is we need to do something right away. We have been talking ad nauseum. And what I would like to see is have this phased in such a way that we're listening to the community and we're saying, okay, what do you want done first? What do you want done second? What do you want done third, fourth? And because I can understand remodeling the building and doing it. It's not just the remodel, it's the installation that needs to go with that, or else we're wasting our time. So I'd like to see that. but I don't know where that's going to fly out as far as cost is concerned. The best thing to do at this juncture is get engineering estimates, and so we can do some long-term together. But I'd love to hear from a prioritized, okay, what do you want done first, second, third, fourth, and then let's put those things out to bid and let's get them done. But I don't see this as a one and done type thing. I see this as a continuing process that I'd like to see overview. That's why I like this. I saw the email you set out the things they want to do and the cost, etc. My first instinct when I looked at that was that that's a great number to begin with, but I think that 250,000 will turn to 350. But I'm okay with that. It's just, you know, let's just do these things in a prioritized manner that is that pleases the community, and let's get something done.
Excuse me. If I'm not mistaken, I think the reason we need to get with the basketball court and the playground is because that $120,000 is going to go away if we don't.
The CDBG grant is
If we don't, yes, we're working on that. So if we take too much time, because they still don't even know what they're doing here with the building on that, that's the only concern that I have.
So I believe we need to move forward with those first two, I guess, phases, for lack of a better word, but those two projects, the basketball court, playground, and the accompanying road and ADA compliant access. I think those are the things that we really have to prioritize most highly right now.
Well, that's basically what the staff is doing, I guess, maybe ahead of your consent, but that's exactly what we're planning. We're pushing forward with those two portions of it. We are working with your direction. We'll be working with Bobby Morales to finalize whatever the community and the commission believe is necessary for that building. And then we also have the wall, which again is being talked about as a donation. And don't forget, we also have that concept, 1.0, which was the grand scheme, if you will, that has other things that you could add later. They're already laid out within it. They're not funded. We've not done any engineering for it, but they're available if the community and the commission want to do something later. The plan is there for that.
Thank you. I do have two requests to speak. The first one is from Nancy Weir.
Nancy Weary, 435 West Delaware. I agree. I'd like to see this going somewhere. Preferably starting with the basketball court. I know our lowest bid last time was $25,000. We clearly have those funds. There is some discussion on the playground equipment, and the citizens would like to be involved in selecting that equipment. We have brought pictures forth of ones that we've seen from the previous playground. One of them is like a train that was kind of blends in with our history. We'd like to pursue some of those, so maybe we can have that open discussion and some of the community be involved in the selection for that. Not that they need the most expensive, but let them have something that they feel kind of fits in for what they want for that part.
Thank you, Ms. Weir. Next blue card I have is from Paulette Smith. I forgot to say it, Ms. Weir, but if you would state your name and address for the record, thank you.
Paulette Smith, 840 West Light Road. I have a question for Lee. Lee, I know you have got an extension on the CDBG grant. When do the first one have to be, you have to break ground and have to permit by?
The CDBG people did not set a deadline. They said as long as we demonstrate progress in completing the project, we were okay. But we do need to show progress. That's the key.
Okay. Do you have any idea when you will be sending this out for bid, or even getting a permit to start?
We have a pre-bid conference set up for later this month, in about a week actually, to sit down with prospective bidders and talk about what we're seeking. incidentally, we did put in as an example that particular piece of equipment that Nancy mentioned. It was in there as this type of equipment or acceptable equal. And so we should get a number. Everybody has their own version of some of these type of things. They don't all look like trains, but they're all the same kind of device. Wait till you see the prices, they're unbelievably expensive. But anyway, so we're moving right along with those, and we are using that particular one that was shown at that very first meeting.
Okay, it's not about the equipment. I'm just trying to figure out, do we have an estimate about when we might start? Because listen, let me talk. Originally, you told me this would be done by September 30th. I just listened. Let me talk.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You said it would be done by September 30th. September 30th is just about here again, and we still have not got a permit yet. So what are we waiting on? We can get the basketball. We can get the basketball road done. We can get something. We need to start somewhere. We just making one excuse after another.
You're absolutely right. We do need to do this and get it started, but it needs to be done in a coordinated fashion. As the mayor mentioned, we need to grade out for all of the improvements to be made, basically on the left side of the road. It can't be done in a piecemeal fashion, or it can't be done very well in a piecemeal fashion. So they will be bid out. The pre-bid meeting, as I indicated, was probably a week or two from now. I don't remember exactly the date. And then we're putting up for bids. It'll be opening bids. We have to allow 30 days. So it will be just after the first of the year before we have bids to actually bring back to the commission for approval.
Generally speaking, once a bid is accepted and approved by the commission, work proceeds relatively rapidly after that.
Well, you need to get the contract signed, which is not difficult, and then the contractor selected will need some time to gear up for the project, and that's all in the bid to estimate how much time before they can start the project, and that's really one of the things you judge the contractor on. If you have equals and one can do it in 6 months and one can do it in a month, obviously you want the one that can do it in a month. So it has taken a good deal of time, but we're making major improvements to a park that has been talked about for 25 years. So we certainly want to get it right.
Talking about it. We're still talking about it. We're not doing anything about it. You know, let's be real. We gotta do something about it. We're just going around and around in a circle. We was talking about it before you got here. We'll probably be talking about it when you leave here. We'll be talking about it when the next person comes. We need to do something. Come on, let's be real.
Ms. Smith, if I may interject, and I'm not trying to argue with you, and I don't want to just ever become argumentative. No, and I know you're not. I know your spirit a little bit. I mean, I don't know you well, but your spirit has come. I know you're trying to hold us accountable and hold our feet to the fire, and sometimes you gotta do that a little bit more assertively, and I think that's what you're doing tonight, and I appreciate that. I will say that we're moving at the speed of government right now, about the best that can be done. I know that sounds goofy, but it's kind of, you know, it's funny because it's true. But last meeting, and if I may, and I may, last meeting, the commission, voted to move forward, and then additional meetings happened, and it kind of threw everything slowly. We need to have that same consensus agreed to tonight and actually free up the staff to just move forward without additional items being thrown out. They need to be able to move forward with confidence that they have the commission behind them. That's what this consensus means. It gives the staff the ability to do their work with the commission behind them. So we're trying to do that. We really are.
I agree, but the basketball was the first. The basketball court was the first thing we talked about a year ago, and you know, I'm just saying, we just need to start somewhere. How hard is it for us to start somewhere?
Well, hopefully we're starting with these first 3 or 4 items that we want to count. We're starting the process. It does take some time. There are legal requirements.
I realize that I worked up on the CBG grant for the last 20 years. So I know how they go, and that's why I asked him, how long did he get his 2024. We just need to start. That's all I'm asking y'all, please, just start somewhere. Y'all let the community feel, oh, y'all don't care about us because y'all haven't even tried to start anyway. And I'm just saying, I'm just being real.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, I personally do not like consensus because it's all left up to interpretation. So on that, I make a motion that we have the staff go out and request bids for basketball court, playground, and landscaping around the two to get the project started.
I'm sorry, basketball court what?
The
Playground and landscaping around the two.
The items included in the 2 CDBG grants is what you want to authorize.
Are you intentionally excluding the grading of the road?
No, that's included. That's included in it.
No, I'm asking. Sorry.
Well, that's included in the grant, the CDBG grant.
That's a good point. Those are included in the CDBG.
The parking area, include the parking area and just outside the playground because the work on the building is going to tear up if they do any parking up by the building when they get to that part. So to do the parking down by the playground.
Before we take the next step, which is to go on this time frame, let's go. Can we get a consensus that if the cost to do this is more than what the CDBG grant that is available, are we going to take that money out of the ARP fund to finish the project? I would be in favor of that.
Well, besides the CDBG grants, he's also got the $25,000 from the property snafu.
I just don't want the revenue side of the whole project.
Right.
It should not. At this point, we are sending it out to bid, and that will drive it there. And then in that logical course for progression of things that happen along this road, we will have opportunity to approve additional funds that will go beyond the CDBG.
We don't know what it's going to cost until we get the bids.
Correct. But you're right. I think it's a reasonable thing to discuss whether or not the commission is willing to go pretty substantially beyond the CDBG grant.
As you recall, we had this discussion probably a year ago. Paulette will remember, and there was not a commitment, but there was an acknowledgement that CDBG or ARPA funds could be used because the CDBG grants are only for $62,000 each, and we're estimating right now, plus the $25,000 Roger's correct, from that settlement, we're probably going to be close to $400,000 for what we're talking about just now, not the building and not the wall. So,
which will be the majority of the remainder of the ARPA. Which is, yes, it will. The majority of the remainder of the ARPA money. It will. That's okay. I just want you to know.
I don't see it ending up that way.
How much remains of the ARPA money that is not yet?
We have 1.4 million.
That's what we originally got.
We have 1.4 million. We dedicated 400,000 to the garbage and the stormwater. There's 250 that we set aside for. I don't mean to set aside because there was no official action, but thought of as using in this particular project. And then we also anticipated using 250,000 to finish the Virginia Drive project, but we finished that without the need for it. So whatever I just said, we had it up, that's 400 and 250, so $650,000 of about half of the CDBG monies will be allocated for that.
Can I ask you a question? So if we get the bid on the playground and the basketball court and it goes over the grant, the ARPA funds that we will add to that to make it doable, that comes out of that budget for the building, right? I mean, so you have like a budget, you're not going to add more ARPA funds to the playground and the basketball court and then still have X amount of dollars towards the building.
You would have to do that.
You would have to take it out of the building.
The 400,000 would only pay for the basketball and the playground and the general improvements the building would be a separate item that I would suggest, we fund in a separate way, another CDBG grant. I have also talked to the ECHO people incidentally about helping us fund that building. And they said that's a possibility.
So our total all-in budget for everything is 400,000, is that what you're saying?
That's only for the first two CDBG grants.
And that's just an estimate.
And that's just an estimate.
I mean, what are we willing to spend is what I'm saying, but is there no cap on the amount that the city's willing to spend? Is the total budget of 400,000 that you had said before?
Well, that's for just the two CDBG grant projects. When we say the basketball court, that's relatively inexpensive, but all the things that go with that particular part of the project, plus the playground. The playground equipment alone is $250,000.
So you're saying just for the playground and the basketball court, we're going to spend $400,000?
Yes.
Is that
And that doesn't count anything to do with the building?
No, around the wall.
And that 400,000 is in addition to the CDBG, or
that includes the CDBG.
Okay.
Wow. So
That was my concern about prioritizing, because does the community want to spend $250,000 on the playground? Does the community want to spend $250,000 on the playground?
Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. That was my point in talking about totality of the project and prioritizing, because I recognize that there is with the new information for remodeling the building, there's a number of $250,000 stuck on it. The playground equipment is $250,000. At some point, to do everything that we want to do, it's probably beyond the scope of the money that we have to do it. So if we, if we prioritize, I'd rather the community say, hey, we'd rather spend $250,000 to remodel the building than do the playground equipment this time. I don't know if that's the answer, but I get it.
If we do that, I think the CDBG grant goes away.
Well,
Yes, it does.
that's very possible.
Yeah.
That's very possible.
And again, I've talked to the ECHO people about doing the building as a separate project.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And that would, the CDBG, because of our demographics, is limited basically to $60,000. CDBG money, or the ECHO money, could actually pay for most of the building. So it's a much better grant. You have to live with it for 20 years, as we know.
I'm saying, do you really want to get another ECHO grant? With what's going on with the other?
They come with strings.
They absolutely do.
As long as we don't open up a restaurant.
Okay.
But that 400, in my mind, exceeds the 550 that remains. Exceeds that was what I was trying to say. If you can approach the math different ways, I don't think I was wrong. I don't think you're wrong either. I just think that Commissioner Bassett was right. This is going to, it's a very, very significant undertaking. And we can't shy away from the fact that this is going to become the majority of it. I mean, the CDBG grants are great, but the majority of it's coming out of pocket. And we just have to be aware of that. That's a very good thing to be aware of. And I believe that's basically what you're saying. I'll put words in your mouth, but yeah. So, with the idea that we don't want to back up any and put this off yet another month, do we as a commission want to move forward with these items that we have?
Roger, with your motion, basically put out to bid all the items that are on the first two CDBG grants.
Yeah, for the basketball court, the playground, and the southern parking area.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second from Commissioner Acker, second from Vice Mayor Basso, to move forward with bid process on the playground, the basketball court, and the southern portion of the parking area. To leave out the part up by the building for future, so that it doesn't get destroyed. That's just part of discussion more than actual part of the motion. Further discussion on this motion as presented, or as seconded. I know. I just want to give you time to mull it over for a second, because this is a big step, and it's one we've been needing to take. I don't want people to think and come back later and say, oh, well, we should have done this. This is our time.
I am a little confused, because I remember they did the first drawing, it was like, oh, like what, $900,000, everything was gonna cost. So, are we seriously considering spending that kind of money?
Phasing it in over a long period of time, she's looking at the entire rectangle rather than just the, say, third of it that we're looking at doing right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at the big picture.
If we added in all of the wish lists, it would have added up to somewhere in that range. But right now, we're trying to get the first third of that, or well, 450-ish of that done. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
One of the things we also got to look at is that since COVID, the price of everything has gone up because of logistics and being able to get the equipment and stuff in. So if we keep on putting it off, the price is going to do nothing but go up and go up and go up. So
No,
when they get it done before it gets way out of hand.
Well, $900,000 to me is out. I don't know.
It's a bunch.
I would probably also do like when you're authorizing or directing with this motion staff to get bids. Then once you get the bids and you select and award a contract, that's when you've actually now contractually agreed to spend the money.
Right.
So there's going to be another review when you actually have hard numbers of what all this stuff is going to cost, and then you'll have another discussion. And you can always, if it goes over budget, you always have the right to reject all bids and start over.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I apologize to Mr. Siffin that I missed his request to speak card. Sir?
Right, that's strike one on accountability there, Cameron. I'm all for this part, but my biggest concern, what is the final price tag going to be? And that, I think, is what a lot of people are trying to guess at what it's going to be. My question is, have we reached out to ECHO on the park itself? Not the building, but the park. Because I've spoken to a member of ECHO, and he actually said this is a prime case for us to seek ECHO money to get this park done. If not all of it, a portion of it. You know, this price tag we're talking now is $400,000 as of today. And this is what happens when the dice kicks the can down the road year after year after year after year. We continue to kick this can down the road, this park is going to end up being $1 million park. And I have a huge concern over that, because $1 million out of our community, you know, is a lot of money considering how much tax we bring in. I think Lee was $1 million last year we brought in taxes alone, roughly. So that's a whole year's worth of tax money. I have no problem with the park, but you know, as either get it done or just don't do it at all, which I would hate to see, because we do need to do something with that park. So quit playing around, make a decision, let's get a price tag. You guys have the authority to reject or accept anything that gets done, but let's continue with this motion, let's get it done so we can find out what the final price tag or a price tag. Because we're talking 400,000, 500, 600, 700,000. Nobody knows until we get the estimates done. So let's just get this done today. All right?
Thank you, Mr. Siffin. Any further discussion today?
I just know when we started talking about doing basketball court 3 years ago, and I was looking at the numbers, concrete out the door is about $100 a cubic yard, and now we're about $160, and everything else is with it. So, doing something immediately is the right thing to do. Yeah. Going off half cost is not the right thing to do. Having an understanding that the totality of everything we want to do here, maybe $1 million, probably. But it doesn't all have to be done tomorrow. I can be phased in at a time. We make an investment in our parks. It's the right thing to do. And I think we need to go forward with what we have ready right now, and then continue moving forward.
Along those lines, I will say that we have a concept plan for the lake park as well that has quite a few things on it that have not yet been done. It's quite normal to put together a full plan, look at what it might cost, $900,000, in that year's dollars, and know where you're going, and knowing that only certain portions of it are going to be done. So that's where we are. This is a very normal place to be. This has not been, we're not kicking those things down the road. This is just a normal way for cities to plan things. So I have a motion on the floor to proceed with the bid process for the playground equipment, the basketball court, and the southern portion of the parking. Is that correct? All in favor? Let's do it by zone, do it right. Zone 1.
Yes.
Zone 2? Yes. Zone 3? Yes. Zone 4?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that carries. Staff, at this point, I believe has firm support of the commission to move forward in that bid process. I thought we had that last month, but apparently I was wrong. We asked that we not interrupt the process anymore. I asked that we not interrupt the process anymore. Let it proceed. Okay. Item 12B, discussion on application by the owner for the county's purchase of the pasture and the city's support. Mr. City Administrator.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, we have this particular item requested Commissioner Rutledge to discuss our application. Actually, it's not our application, it's the application of the property owner to sell what is known as the pasture, about 78 acres of land between Lemon and Ohio, Pravat, and basically Pleasant. And that particular piece of land is valued at the county property appraiser's office at about $1.2 million, which understanding that's 80% of the value. So we're looking probably 1.5 market value. And we have made the commitment to Volusia Forever to fund 10% of the negotiated final price and to maintain the property thereafter. We received only a B rating, which means it's still a live application, but it is not currently being funded by Volusia Forever. And we have the opportunity to make another presentation coming up in December 7th. And as you know, I suggested a strategy on how we could present that particular land to Volusia Forever that I think makes a lot of sense. It would be, in not that many years, basically the only undeveloped portion in this part of the county of any significance. Wouldn't be a park, it would be a natural area that would serve not necessarily as organized recreation, but hikes and bicycle trails and stuff like that. But again, I'm taking thunder away from.
Thank you. Primarily, the reason I wanted to bring this up tonight was just to open the floor for any discussion and also just to keep the public in. I know last time this was discussed, there was public comment they wanted to be involved, and this is a project that's very important to the public, so I wanted to make sure that we're just continuing the conversation. With that being said, I don't really have anything else unless you all do.
If I may, since you asked to, and you did ask to put this on the agenda, is that right? Okay. Are you in favor? Are you speaking for it, or do you just want to start this discussion? Do you want to say something in favor or against it? Either one.
I mean, I still support moving forward with keeping it pasture, but I know that the public felt a little like there wasn't enough time to talk about it the last time. So I wanted to make sure we were considering everyone's input in case there was input, and also just to make sure we're all in the consensus, the same consensus now with the new commission.
Okay, well, we'll start then with public participation. We do have 3 blue cards. First one I've received is Nancy Weary.
Nancy Weary, 435 West Delaware. I have a question about the price. We were told it was $4 million and we would be on the hook for $400,000. So now we're saying it's going to be 10% of the 1.5. Is that correct?
Okay. I think the answer to that, the secret answer to that is the seller believes it's worth $1.4 million. The property appraiser believes that it's worth $1.5 million. And the final number, in my estimation, would be if the county decided to proceed with the acquisition, they would retain an appraiser. The seller would obtain an appraiser. Those two appraisers would submit their value of the land, and the price would be somewhere in between. I cannot imagine the county being willing to pay more than appraised value for any land. It'd just be a terrible precedent to do that. So that's, and what that number is, I don't know. All I know is the seller thinks it's worth, as you might imagine, $4 million. The county property appraiser believes $1.5 million. The truth is somewhere in between.
It's just a very big difference, and it's something that we do need to consider when we talk about the parks. And I'm not opposed to the conservation of land. I've always spoken for it, however we get it. I just don't want to be gouged. I don't want our county taxes paying for it and then our city taxes, and we're taking away from other things. I also want to bring forward, I did a records request for the last time you guys went to the county, and what was presented to them was initially it would cost the city, us, an additional $810,000 to acquire it for the cleaning of weeds and vegetation.
$810,000?
Oh, it came to $810,000. There's actually a paper out there for it, and
I have never seen
these
that
are
number. I heard 5,000.
It's $810,000. That's a lot of money. On
Just because there's a paper out there that says that doesn't necessarily
you
say.
guys submitted it together. I'm just telling the truth. So
To weed a pasture?
part of
And
it
spend
was
$800,000 for it, to me is
it
sounds
was
a
a
lot.
accumulation of things, and that amount did not include continuing maintenance. And I think, like I said, I'm not opposed to the acquisition of it. I just think, like the park, like all the things that we want to do here, your wife did it.
Well, at that same meeting, you did oppose it pretty thoroughly.
Excuse me?
At that same Echo, or not Echo,
I
same
do
Illusion
oppose
Forever,
it.
you did oppose it.
I wasn't present. I did do a follow-up letter, and I do oppose.
And you're fully allowed to. I'm just saying, you're saying a different thing now than you
No
said
one,
then.
I have never, she had a town hall meeting long before this was ever taken there, and I sat right here and said, I am for the preservation of that
I
land.
know, and then when you, and then at the.
I am opposed to $4 million, and us being on the hook for $400,000 and an additional $810.
Okay.
That hurts us all.
Okay, yes, we thank you very much. Mr. Parrott, Parrott.
Real quick, before we move on, when did you, Ms. Weir, when did you say that the paper was submitted for the $810,000? Was it 2009?
The last Echo, the last Forever meeting that they attended, I don't have the date, but I can get you that information.
Can you get that document available for us, please?
Oh, absolutely.
And
It was an estimate by the engineers to, for lack of a better description, clean up the property and then maintain it. But the engineers asked me what's going to be used for, and there's no way that I could say what it's going to be used for, because that's part of the negotiations that has to occur on the use of the property. And since that time, we've heard a good deal more lenient. The original idea was very stringently limited only to hiking and bicycle trails, things like that. We've since heard that you could have a number of other activities that would change the scope of maintenance significantly. So what it would cost to maintain the property, which we did make a commitment to do, is really an unknown factor, although it would be a cost, but it would be an unknown factor. And I would just remind you of one other thing too, because it's rather unusual process. The applicant is the property owner, makes the offer to the county to buy their land for Volusia Forever, then becomes public domain land. But it is up to the property owner to accept or reject any offer counter offer made by the counties. The city is not party to the acquisition at all. that is strictly between the two. So if the 1.5 turns out to be woefully inadequate in the eyes of the seller simply can walk away from it. And all of our discussions are moot. But that is what the city is not party to, is what I'm trying to say. So.
But do you have an approximate date of, I'm just wondering if it's been 10 years ago, it's going to be completely updated or
Date for acquisition?
No, for that 810 that was brought up.
That's, and I think what the mayor's alluding to, that's to clean up the property, but that property is not that dirty, quote unquote. I don't know why we have to spend, they're talking about removing invasive species of weeds and things like that. And it's done by an environmental engineer, so that's part of the explanation for the cost, I think.
Okay.
It's not you and I going out there and pulling weeds. It'll be a lot easier.
Thank you.
Mr. Parrott.
Yep. Ron Tarrant, 451 West Michigan. I'd like to go on the record that I do oppose for all these unknown factors. You cannot sit up there and approve that we're going to be on the hook for 10% when you don't agree there's a cap. And if you're going to do something to purchase property like that, say we'll go 10% if we purchase it at what the appraised value of that property is, not the inflated property. And there's a couple of other factors that, the rumor mill goes to the city, and I'd like you to clear up. This property, can it be built on for 100 years or 80 years? I heard the previous owner that willed it to the children said that nothing could be built on that property for 80 or 100 years after his death. Is that true?
I have no earthly idea. That's a private matter. I have no earthly idea.
Well, it's a matter we should find out, because if nobody can build on that property, why are we trying to save it? 30 minutes saved. Agree. Also, is there a commissioner that is tied to that property through a relative? Does it cost a family?
That has been disclosed several times.
Okay, well, it's disclosed again. I just wanted to say, you guys need to put some caps on it. You need to know how much it's going to cost to maintain that property before you commit 10% of the purchase price, and you need to put a cap on that 10% of that purchase price. Because there's other properties that fit the A list that should be looked at before we put it into it's a big pond right now. So we're going to put money in and put trails that are going to be underwater, or we're going to put a boating in it. The property is worthless. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parrott. Next blue card I have quite a few, so we'll try and keep the discussion to a minimum. I'm asking the commission to try and keep the discussion to a minimum. Make some notes as to things you'd like to bring back up at the end of this discussion, and let's let the citizens speak and try not to interrupt. I know I'm just as guilty as anybody, but let's try. Mr. Smith. And after Mr. Sniffen will be Kelly Krasker.
All right.
If you would state your name.
Yes, sorry, Kirk Sniffen, 491 West Delaware. I oppose this transaction 100%. As many points, a lot of points have already been made, where it's a blank check. And I don't believe in blank checks being approved by anybody. We need to come up with a firm price. And I'm pretty sure that's something you guys can actually put within the discussion or the motion that, when the motion is made. But, here again, we're looking at $400,000 for Melissa Park. We're looking at another, $140,000 for this purchase. Are we going to finance that $140,000? Is that going to come out of ARPA money? Because it seems like the ARPA money is becoming our little playground for you guys. And there's a lot of other opportunities we can use that ARPA money for. All right, and I'm telling you guys, I would hate to use this word, but we're pissing that money away when we got major issues. We got water issues and we got stormwater issues, and we are just pissing that money away. All right, so really think about say I'm all for preserving that area. Trust me, it's beautiful when you come in down the road that it's untouched. Okay, and really think about it. We have to put a cap on it, because now we're going to have to hire somebody to maintain it, or pay to maintain it. It's a lake right now, mean, so, you know, we're gonna have to maintain that lake until the water levels go down. So just really please think about it, because I'm tired of pissing away this slush fund that you guys think the ARPA money is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kelly Kraska, and after Kelly will be Ann Sizzle.
Kelly Braska, 616 John Street. Good afternoon. The discussion that Ms. Berry was talking about, the documents were given to Evolution Forever underneath the recommendations of the initial cost. Underneath the initial cost, and this is where it will total up to over 800,000. $10,000 spray area for invasive vegetation. $50,000 to manual remove invasives. Trail construction, $350,000. Then you have carried cost annual, $2,500 for spraying area for invasive vegetation, $500,000 for manual removing invasives, and these again are annual. Long-term maintenance costs, $5,000 for spraying the invasive vegetation, $25,000 for removing invasives, and $100,000 for trial construction. Now that totals up to the 800. But in that same meeting where that information was provided, was also guaranteed, I believe Cameron, didn't you set up an offer some of your own money for this project to see through?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
So that documentation should be memorable because it was all in the same package at the same meeting. So here we are looking at a project, and just alone the maintenance and what we have to do outside the purchasing of the property is over $800,000. So I just want to have that clear. And that documentation is from the Volusia Forever.
I thought you said part of that was the construction of the sidewalk.
No, I said that the trail.
The trail, I mean.
Part of that is the trail.
There's $250,000, right?
Pardon me?
$350,000. I thought you said $250,000 or $350,000 for the construction of the trail, yes.
There was the initial cost and then there was the overall.
And it totaled up to $800,000, correct?
Yes, all those numbers all together on that
So
document.
one of those would not be part of maintenance, it'd be a one-time.
The
It
initial
was
cost
initial,
810.
yeah.
Right, but we're calling it maintenance. And it's-
We're not, well,
I wasn't including the maintenance and the 810.
That's why.
I'm sure they have the documentation, and so does Volusia Forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Braska. Ann Sizzle, you're next, and after Ann Sizzle will be Betty Locke.
Analyst is Craig Atkins. Just a comment, I mean, we've all seen Pasture Lake now, and while this hurricane Ian was a phenomenon, it seems to be coming more and more often. So how much of that property, or is the property value diminished because a good portion of it is water? And will that water go away? Or will the water stay? Or do we have no lake? You know, those are things that need to be considered also in the price that we're going to pay.
Thank you, Mrs. Sizzle. The last blue card is Betty Locke.
Betty Locke, 715 McKinsey Road. I was just going to follow up on that as I went by the other day and saw what it looked like. And unfortunately, people don't talk about this, but we're dealing with climate change, and that piece of property might stay the way it is or get worse. I mean, I live in a house that we have a lot of water around it right now, and it's not going anywhere. It's just sitting there staring at me, as you well know. But what I'm wondering is, it sounds like a really great idea, so I'm not going to say I'm for or against it, but I'm wondering if it's really worth the money to do it. I mean, I love parks and I love trails and stuff. That's my thing. I'm an environmentalist. But I'm not sure that that property is going to be able to be able to maintain with all of the climate changes and everything coming around, and it already showed that I couldn't even believe it when I drove by and I thought, oh my gosh, what happened to the piece of property? Stuff will have to be done to it, like on my piece of property, in order to do some fixing, I'm gonna have to bring in fill dirt. I am, to part of my property. So, and it's been like that, and it's gotten worse over the years. So that piece of property, even though, all right, well, maybe it's all going to dry up now, I'm just not really optimistic about that. So I think this is something y'all need to consider. It would be great to have this piece of property in our, you know, we can look at it and say, look, we have this piece of property, we've got this and that. I'm just a little, and I'm usually an optimist on things, but I'm not really sure that we are going to get a bang for our dollar out of that. You know, bang for a buck. I just think it is going to be just a drain on the city itself. And I do know there are other pieces of property that are, because I was one of the ones that put in a request, that actually would do the same if we could get them, and would preserve, we would have wildlife on it. There's already wildlife on these pieces of property. There's already, we can do trails and everything. So we might want to really look at where we really want to spend our money. Thank you.
Ms. Frasback, we've already had your 3 minutes. If you could keep it short.
I have one question I forgot to ask. Who paid for the survey of that property?
Recent survey?
Mm-hmm. Not the city? Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes public addressing of this issue. I made several notes that I will try and briefly address, and fellow commissioners, you can go as well if you so desire. The blank check concept of this was not a blank check. When we made our resolution, it did have a ceiling. It wasn't blank, it had a ceiling. The ceiling was pretty high because the commission wanted this to happen. The ceiling was around $400,000, I believe, or something like that. That's what memory serves. But that was with the understanding that it probably would not be that. As the city administrator said, the assessed value is much lower, and odds are the purchase price will be lower. Having firm numbers, what's the request? Having firm numbers before we proceed is not an option. We can't have firm numbers before we decide to proceed. We can have firm numbers before we do the final deal, but if we don't commit ourselves within a range, which is what we did, then it dies without seeing the light of day ever. So we are in a process, not at a final decision on expenditure of funds. The 800,000 I have not looked at fully. That did include some capital improvements. It also included things that, I'll mention one of the capital improvements, the trailhead at 300 or 350,000, if I heard that right. That would be an option of something, whether or not we would want to spend it. It also would be an opportunity to reach out for echo grants, things like that. Wouldn't necessarily have to come out of pocket. Those are future things. We can't bind future commissions to spending money. So that goes, I would disagree with some of that. As far as how many down to the last invasive we removed, that's another thing. Everything is scalable within that. 800,000 came from one estimate, and everybody has their own opinion. My opinion is that it would be significantly less than that, because I don't think this commission would spend that. That's just an opinion. The lake and the fact that Lake Harlan breathes dramatically, it always has. I have seen this lake this high. Charlie, I'm sure you have too. I've seen this lake this high many times. It's just been a long time. Those of you who haven't been here for 40 years probably don't remember it this high, because it's been about that long. It's been about a 40-year cycle. Nature has some long cycles. This is not unusual for this. It does affect the value of the land. You're absolutely right about that. And whether it enhances it or is negative to it, I don't really, it's not my purview, but it does affect it. This is certainly, and frankly, all of what we see in Lake Helen right now, all of the water that's coming up over the edge of roads and everywhere, I have seen this many, many, many times. Used to be at the end of, basically at the end of every summer, like we are right now. You'd have your summer rains, you have a tropical storm, and you'd be right here. I've seen it and seen it and seen it. Up in Florida, I'm not being snide. It is where we live. This is what it does to us. We can't fight Mother Nature, and I don't know why we should try. We just have to recognize what it's doing and try our best to live within what she allows us to do. Those are all the things that I had made notes on from what people spoke towards. Commissioner Ackford, over here.
Years and years ago, when I first moved to the area, Lake Helen had a lot of orange trees. All the area north of Lemon Street, south of Lemon Street, south of Ohio, east of Purbat was a large orange grove with dirt roads running through it. I think the only paved road was Lemon so that the people could get back to the mobile villas that was back, they built back there. And it was only half the size of what it is now back then. Lake Harlan was hidden back in an orange grove, so it wasn't really noticed too much by very many citizens. And it was used to water the orange grove. So its level went up and down with the rainy season and the drought season. And it's happened. Even the woods of Lake Helen used to be an orange grove. Now it's houses. The landscape of Lake Helen has changed. This is an intent from some of the people in the city and some of the commission to preserve part of Lake Helen, to turn it into a wildlife corridor and possibly a park. There's a lot of misconceptions about some of it. Yes, the initial price the homeowner wants, it's overpriced. I've seen that happen down in Delta on a number of their purchases where they paid 2 to 3 times the value of the property against the citizens' wishes. I'm not going to go against the citizens' wishes here and pay for an overpriced piece of property. The percentage that we put down is to help in the forever process. You have to, the city or government agency has to commit to a certain amount. Whatever the negotiated price comes out to be, that's when we make our decision if we really want to do it or not. So everybody just hold on, stop blowing it out of proportion. The water, the lakes in Lake Helen are going to go up, they're going to go down, and I'm guesstimating that sometime in the next 20 years, you're going to see the bottom of Lake Macy again, and Lake Helen Lake will be a couple little puddles again, because that's the way the drought cycle and the rain cycle fluctuates in Lake Helen. It goes up and down, and the water table goes up and down. We've had over 77 inches of rain this past year. That has increased the water table drastically from previous years. It's almost twice as amount of rain as it was the year before. So yes, we have flood issues, and hopefully this next subject will cover part of that. But we'll see what happens. Just don't beat something to death until we get all the answers. We don't have all the answers yet. We are going to try to get the answers as they come through, but it's a long, drawn-out process.
Any other commissioner comments?
I'm just going to say that by recommendation from the council, I recuse myself on this vote, and I cannot publicly even tell you how I feel about it. But if anybody wants to know how I feel about it, call me.
I do want to add one more thing that I forgot to say. This was being talked about as I was running for mayor a year ago. It was talked about a lot. And while 6 people here tonight spoke against it, I had, it's hard to put a number on it, many, 50, 100 people at least, talk to me about how important that pasture was to the sense of Lake Helen as people saw it, kind of the paradigm of what Lake Helen is. That great big pasture right here in the heart of the city really was important to people. And there was also a high sentiment at that time, again a year ago. There was tremendous push for development and growth. One of the main things that I said to people as I was running about holding feet to the fire. I'm still holding my own feet to the fire over this. I told people I was not pro-development. I was not going to be seeking to increase the density or support any projects that increase the density that we had within our company. And I will not support that ever. I don't believe. This pasture is a fantastic opportunity for this commission to affect that density going forward. It's an opportunity to set land aside. Volusia Forever is largely looks at buying things that we, as much as possible, just leave alone and leave them as nature intended them, so to speak. You have to kind of help nature stay where she is, but you get the idea. We don't have to spend huge amounts of money. That'll be up to future commissions. So anyway, while we did have 6 people speak against this tonight, I've had at least 100 people speak to me in favor of it. And we are the elected officials who are responsible to represent as best we can the will of all the citizens. It's fine that people come out and speak against things. Rarely do people come out and speak for things. They do that to us privately or in campaign efforts. So I think that far outweighs in my mind. And if I'm looking forward to a vote on this and to freak my past vote, I still support my past vote in supporting this purchase and supporting being a part of moving this purchase forward with Volusia Forever. I think it's a fabulous opportunity. There are some issues, and everything y'all brought up are legitimate, but there's always 2 sides to everything. And I think the pros on this vastly outweigh one man's opinion. We do have before us, well, that is the discussion, and it is good. Thank you, Heather, for bringing this to us to discuss more, because you're right. Obviously, passions and interests are still very high on this. So it's good to discuss it. Very good to discuss it. Any further discussion on the dais?
Just thank you for entertaining it, and thank you for the input that we've received. I appreciate every comment, even for or against.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
So much. Thank you.
Just if anybody has a heart to go into the storeroom over here and pull out the plat that's back there against one of the walls that shows that pasture as a designated wildlife corridor area. So it's interesting what is stored away in the storeroom.
I would love to see that.
One of the pieces of information, I don't know if everybody is aware of it, but that property was originally zoned for 1.25 acres housing. Correct. None of the people that sit on this dais today were responsible for changing it from 1.25 acres to 1/3 of an acre. So that was done by a different commission, and that's one of the challenges that we have. I personally believe that if it was still an 1.25 acres, it would probably serve the city better. But, you know, that didn't happen under our watch, and I probably should shut up.
No, that's valuable information. And maybe you should shut up. I don't know. Okay, new business. Approval of order for miscellaneous projects, pond engineering. Mr. City Administrator.
And Mr. Mayor, members of the Commission, this particular item is a routine request to authorize for pond engineering to be able to be used by the city staff for various items of an infrequent nature that come to our attention. We need the services of an engineer. In this particular last 6 weeks, you can imagine we have been heavily involved in stormwater, drainage, and all of those things. The city engineer and I have been to various properties, sometimes 2 and 3 times, trying to find solutions to problems that, quite frankly, are very, very difficult and not impossible. Not because we can't do them, but simply because we have no place to put the water. But those are the kinds of investigations that we are called upon regularly on behalf of citizens to investigate if they have an issue involving an engineering aspect. I'm not an engineer, and nobody in the staff is, so we call on the engineers to tell us what, in their opinion, is the best solution for a problem. And this is the charge against which those funds are paid, and that's the reason we are coming here today, because we've used all the appropriation from the last work order. So we're requesting an additional sum so we can continue that, those investigations that pop up from time to time.
Do you need authorization for this work order?
Yes. Just a motion to approve.
Do we have a motion? Question. You want to start with a motion, or do you want to start with a question? You can do either one you want. Go for it.
Is this going to include the surveys for the stormwater master plan?
No, that's a separate project. And that's separately funded too.
Do you have a motion to approve this expenditure?
I'm confused because I thought we took care of this already, or is this different than what we did the last time? Can you explain that further?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you mean by
In other words, I thought we had a general agreement with Pond already to do general engineering.
Oh, we do.
This is an annual thing that we're reviewing?
Basically, it depends on how many times we call upon them for engineering expertise, and lately it's been frequent, so therefore the bill's higher. But this is their, and it's a good business practice, but their finance people will not allow one of their engineers to go on a project unless there is a funding mechanism to back it up.
No, and I understand that, but I also looked at under compensation, it says see attached rate schedule.
Oh, it's the same one you already approved. It's not changed.
Okay.
And I don't have it with me. I believe it's
Okay.
sorry.
Well, I mean, I know what it was, and I approved it last time, so I'm okay with that, but for John Q. Public out there who's looking at this agenda,
I understand.
I'm okay.
Mr. Bishop?
Yeah, I have a comment. We have a $30,000 budget for engineering, and they're already asking for $48,000 for miscellaneous. How's that work?
Well, I actually, you kind of asked that, almost that exact same question last meeting, and I followed up on that with staff, and I don't have a perfect answer to it, but I have an answer, and I did do some follow-up on it, and I'll share this with you afterwards, and I guess it's a public record now, but it always has been really. But yes, we have spent a lot on engineering, but that engineering cost then usually gets assigned out of that $30,000 mark. It's kind of a pool for initiating things. Once we start something, then it gets that money gets reallotted to whatever project it became part of. Like there's quite a few, $22,000, $22,868.53 that we spent on Melissa Park engineering. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different things. So we have called upon engineers to do things, to do work on Melissa Park. That all initially went into that $30,000 line item, but then gets transitioned to Melissa Park.
So does that come out of the Melissa Park budget?
It is a Melissa Park expense in the end. So that's why that $30,000 is almost a transitory item in the budget, or things flow through that. So it's kind of a placeholder almost. Does that make sense? I don't know if I explained that well or not.
I have to learn more about the budget.
That's fine. That's fine.
something I need to study.
Absolutely. And to come up with a different answer, feel free to enlighten us. I'm not being snarky at all. Because that was a good question, and I did want to follow up on it. We do listen. We do. So we still need either motion to approve or motion to deny this.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
I have a motion from Vice Mayor Basso and a second from Commissioner Bishop to approve the $48,000 for pond engineering for these miscellaneous projects work order. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries unanimously. And actually, I wanted to say, I'll say it now, it's a little out of order, but for all of these things, we are required to go on record with our vote. So when I ask for all those in favor say aye, you can't just sit there and not say anything. There's no abstaining up here. Just know that if you don't speak up with a nay, you're going down as a yay in the official record. So if you disagree with something, you have to speak
If I
up.
wasn't loud enough, I'll say yes.
No, it's not that. I just want you to know that when I say motion carries unanimously, that has weight of the record, and I didn't want that to mislead anybody. I'm not trying to be flippant with these votes. That's what it means.
You can't abstain if you are personally involved in it.
Yeah, that's a little different.
Time I've done one time.
Yeah.
But then we got a lot of paperwork we get to fill out.
Yeah, that is different. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify that with the new commission being seated. I figure once a year is about enough to talk about that. Okay, so item 13B, modifications of utility service agreement with the villas. And this one I asked to be put on the agenda. The villas water bill has been chaotic, to say the least. In discussion with the city administrator and following up basically with the policy that we put together as a commission for individual homeowners when we had water meter issues, that we would look at an average and go forward with that until the issues have been resolved. I took that same basic concept and moved forward with the villas and their chaotic thing. I tried to apply that precisely. There is still a little bit of discrepancy with what an average would be. They're coming up with a different number than staff is right now. And I had a long discussion yesterday and a brief discussion today with Mr. Titcomb, the owner of the villas. He's amenable to looking at that number. They gave us a number, but he was also amenable to finding a legitimate average, and he knows that it may well be higher than the number that we first came up with, which was 877. It could be closer to 1,200 instead, but he is amenable to finding a true average. I just want to let y'all know those negotiations are going on, because it's not exactly under the resolution where we've done addressing individual homeowners. I'm just trying to apply as closely as I can. Anybody want to weigh in on that, or are you comfortable with my moving forward with that? I'll let you know everything we ultimately decide. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Next, we have a quasi-judicial hearing on certificate of appropriateness. Are there any ex parte communications from any commissioners? Hearing none, I had none as well, although I said hi to one of the attorneys earlier.
You know what ex parte
Ex parte communication.
I did ask the question to the attorney earlier, but I'm going to ask it again here.
Okay.
Okay.
So, we have A through G here for approval. All are recommended for approval by the board. Any discussion?
I just have one question, if you don't mind. If you don't mind stepping up, and we'll just go over that one more time.
And if you would, when you get to the podium, give your name. And it says name and address, but you can tell what company you represent.
No problem. George Denison, 3300 South Hiawassee Road, City Office Address, representing Council for Joe Fair Development.
Thank you. I just wanted to re-ask the question about elevation in relation to the existing home there, and by elevation, not the look of it, but the ground height.
Sure, yeah, and so the elevation will also be built to spec according to the site plan that was approved in the site plan approval process. All of that's been engineered. I'm not an engineer, I can't necessarily speak to the actual elevation on the grade that we're dealing with, but that all is fleshed out with the city engineer and with our engineers, and so we'll be building the spec.
Thank you.
That's a good question, and we've addressed it in several things that it came up largely in the woods. Hasn't ever applied to this development, but it has definitely been a thorn in our side. Have we, Mr. Administrator, if we could make sure that permitting looks at the elevation and make sure that when I've forgotten what numbers we said, 12 inches above grade or above the ground of the road, I don't know what they were, but
Probably best let the city attorney explain that. Or the ordinance, correct?
I was just trying to remember, I know, did we actually ever adopt that?
I thought we did, or we're in the process of it.
Yeah, I don't know if
Yeah.
it came back to adoption.
And it's, I'm not sure if it is, but it was at least 12 inches.
Well,
and no higher than.
There's a minimum standard that's established by the state.
Right.
What there was no maximum.
Right.
So we established plus or minus 6 inches.
That's what we did, is establish the maximum. But this particular project, as I recall, part of the plat was to establish the drainage and the elevation.
We're talking about things, 4 elevations, we're not talking about grade elevations. Grade elevations are established by your site plan. Right. Engineer's handbook.
The only reason I bring it up is because that, as Commissioner Basso said, there's a standard that applies across the state, but we added that no more than 18 inches to that standard in the city, and it's an easy thing to miss. And once you pour a slab, it's a hard time to catch it. So if you could just tell your people that you know not to miss that.
Absolutely.
Our permitting people shouldn't miss it either, but it's just we don't want to ruffle any feathers. We don't have to ruffle.
Yeah, it's a good. Noted, we don't want to have to read
I know
this
you
slide
don't.
either, so we'll make sure.
The ordinance I have in my computer that I drafted says that the finished floor elevation of any new structure shall not exceed 6 inches above the minimum finished floor elevation established by the Florida Building Code. So you have a Florida Building Code, and you can only go 6 inches above. I cannot recall if that ever got adopted.
If you could shoot for that, regardless of whether it was adopted or not. I seem to recall it being adopted, but I couldn't say for sure.
Can you research and bring it back to us next month? Because if we
Well,
have any doubt.
if it hasn't been, it needs to first go to the planning board for a recommendation, and then it's just by, so I don't know if it's the planning board, either, but it'll have to go there first.
Okay.
Land
That
development.
may be what we did, was send it to them.
I think there was some discussion in the but anyway, well,
No, I've contacted the Florida Building Code Commission, and they never got back with me.
Right.
And so I can't imagine that they're setting a minimum elevation.
Right.
So anything above that should be, okay, we're not saying to go below the minimum.
Right.
We're just saying we can't go above a certain amount, so you've got to be in a range. So that doesn't appear a conflict in my opinion with the Florida Building Code. I think we actually sent it to them. So let them talk about adopting the show.
So my recommendation, and it is purely a recommendation, just thinking out loud, it carries no force of resolution in any way, is the resolution that we're trying to get to eventually is if there's a 12-inch minimum required by the state, we wanted to keep it within 6 inches of that. That's a fairly simple concept. If you would share that with your builders.
Whatever the minimum finished floor elevation is, like, well, I think it's 8 foot, but I don't know that for sure.
It used to be 2 feet above the ground level. That's what it used to
We
be.
wouldn't go more than 2 feet 6 inches because we don't want that one house really high.
Right.
So they're all within a range of 6 inches.
And is Derek Wayne Scott, is he working with this figure as well? Do you know, does he aware of this and has he been communicating with Joe on that number?
yes.
Okay, I'm sure he has. I know they've been doing a lot behind it. Okay. That's
Yeah, it's one of those things on the contractor side. Contractors always have the flexibility to go higher than that. Homeowners have had the flexibility to go higher than that. And we go through this process of
certificates of appropriateness, which have everything to do with architecture and aesthetics, etc. And we were not going to consider, okay, you decide to put 3 or 4 feet above it. The law allows you to do it.
Can you please speak up? We're having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. What I was saying was, the state requires houses to be built a certain elevation minimum. And that is for drainage and keeps houses from flooding, et cetera, et cetera. What they don't require is there's a max. So let us work with the old verbiage, which was the house slab had to be 2 feet above the crown of the road, at minimum. Now, if you wanted to put it 6 feet above the crown of the road, you could. There was no maximum that was ever established. We noticed that during this process of certificate of appropriateness, it made no sense that we look at the architectural of everything, but then we don't even consider the elevation of the house, how it fits into the rest of it. That made no sense for us. So we just said, okay, you need to meet state minimum, but you can't exceed 6 inches beyond that.
Yeah. Okay, any further discussion on these certificates of appropriateness A through G?
Yes, I'd like to hold E, F, and G on a separate vote first from A through D.
Okay, would you like to make a motion then of A through D?
There's a card there for 14D. D is in dog.
Let's just take the, I'll make a motion to approve a certificate of appropriateness for items A, B, and C.
Second.
The motion by Vice Mayor Basso, second by Commissioner Eckert to approve items A, B, and C, the certificate of appropriateness for items A, B, and C. Any further discussion on those 3? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Those 3 carry unanimously. I do have, that brings us right to D, and I do have a public speaker card on 14D, Mr. Perry.
Ron Ferrick, 451 West Michigan Avenue. This is my next door neighbor, is 427. He's requesting a shed. And what's been approved is a 10 by 16 shed with 16 feet running perpendicular to my house. And if you look at the drawings of the shed, Mr. Morales has required him to match his, it's got like a front porch to the shed to match the columns of his house. But those are facing to the interior of his lot. And he's got barn doors facing the road, which would not be a very attractive look as you drive past his house. I talked to my neighbor, and he says, yeah, he would like to turn his shed 90 degrees, so as you drive by, you will see the front porch to the shed, matches the front porch to the house. He has no issues. We'd like you to approve it with adding that as a contingency, just so it goes with the bill.
I've got no problem with that. I'd like to hear from Mr. Morales on whether or not he's got any object over that.
I think we would also have to hear from the homeowner with further requests to make that change. Mr. Morales, please. Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Bobby Morales, historic design consultant for the city. Appreciate the comments there from our citizen. If this gets approved, the homeowner, I believe, can come back with a modification to historic board, requesting that the orientation of the shed be changed. And then the board can go ahead and approve or deny. So that would be my recommendation here, that it be approved and then allow the homeowner to modify it if he so chooses to do so.
Have you looked at that modification idea, or have you not? Or have you just looked at the original application?
No, we just reviewed the original application.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
he would also have to reorientate the double barn doors. Otherwise, he's only got a 7-foot gap between his double doors and the fence. So he has to put them on the other side.
Correct. But that's why we had that provision of a modification.
Well, what's the will of the commission?
Well, I would like to think in this world, everybody could be happy, joy, and if we could just let it happen, but you're telling me that he's got no logic over it, the homeowner.
Right.
And when I'm hearing Bobby say this, says, well, if we approve it, he can come in and change it, but then there's no teeth in that. I don't also want to take the flexibility and have this go on another 30 days before he can do it. I would like to approve this, okay, I'll have the homeowner to come in and change it. Do you have a problem if he decides to change his mind and tell you, no, I don't want to change it?
I talked to the board, the architect review board, which it has to go, all these permits have to go through them, and I shared my concern, and they agreed that aesthetically, driving past that house, seeing that porch would be much better than seeing barn doors. So I think he's gonna, he would run into trouble with the HOA, and I know he wants to keep a happy neighbor, and I want to keep a happy neighbor. So he agreed that
Do you think if we approve it tonight, he'll change it to make everybody happy?
Yeah, or he's gonna have to change it to get it approved through our review board, or he'll, if he puts it in the wrong place, he'll have to redo it, so.
Well, we have an application that is not that. That's not what you're saying, he's agreed to.
That's why I'm really.
That's what we would be approving tonight.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't catch it on his review of the placement of that shed.
Well, they have to.
For aesthetics, you know, for the woods and the gateway.
They have to.
We don't represent, if I may, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I can only speak for the Historic Preservation Board, not the HOA. And of course, we're trying to please the desires and wishes of the applicant, the homeowner, and that is what he presented. So we can only assume that that was his wish and desire. And we reviewed it in such a manner.
Where is the HOA in the process? In other words,
Do they have a place in the process for approval or denial?
Yes.
After it's approved by the city, sorry, I missed it quickly, but after it's approved by the city, it will come to us.
Thank you. So the answer to that is after it's approved by the city, it then goes to the HOA.
Okay.
But can we approve it subject to or based on
Approved by the HOA?
follow-up approval by the HOA?
I think
We don't enforce HOA regulations, so they're independent approvals. So if it comes to, it's kind of a chicken or egg thing, we talked about this before, it comes to us and we review it based on our regulations. Then the HOA has to approve it. And if either one goes first and then the second one doesn't approve what the previous one did, then they have to come back to the previous one for approval. So, but we don't, see, if we say our approval is conditioned upon the HOA, we are now enforcing the HOA regulations. And those are private covenants, we have nothing to do with that. So, you gotta satisfy both of them, and you have to go back and forth like a previous.
That was like the first three. I was wondering why we're approving the color of the houses, and I think that should be the HOA's job, approving the color of the houses.
They actually have similar requirements.
And it sits in our either our gateway or our historic overlay. So we do colors within those. Okay, so we have a request, item D here for 427 West Michigan, a request from the homeowner that's been approved by the board, by the Historic Preservation Board. What would you like to do?
I'll make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for a shed at 427 West Michigan Avenue.
Second.
I have a motion from Vice Mayor Basso, a second from Commissioner Eckert to approve the request for a shed or the certificate of appropriateness for 427 West Michigan. Any further discussion?
Can we? Yes.
You've had your public
input,
and
Can't you put it, you can't put a little stipulation in it that he can change it if he wants, so he doesn't
I have a
wait
motion- I have
30
a-
days?
Mr. Perry, I have a motion before the board that I am
You're correct.
appropriately
You're correct.
calling the question. I do have a hand up in the back, but I do not have a card, Mr. Tiffin.
Well, no, it's because this just came up.
Well,
I just forgot what I was going to say with all that paper.
well,
Go ahead.
we're calling, I am calling the question. I mean,
From us, it goes to the HOA next anyway.
Right, but if I understand the city attorney, we can approve this, but if the HOA does not approve because they want to turn, okay, that's when that comes into play.
Just don't want him to go back 30 days to wait for him to get paid another. Okay, you'll be all right, attorney.
we can only vote on the certificate that's
The
before us.
HOA can approve reorientation without coming back.
Yes, they can, and then it would come to us, and it would be done at that point. But it would have to come back to us.
All they're doing is reorienting the shed, they're not.
But we have approved it with this current plat. And so they wouldn't be able to change this current plat without coming back to us.
This is basically design, architectural design, and then it goes to the HOA, and then it comes back to us for permitting. Okay? So he didn't get a permit to do it until it comes back to the HOA, so he's stopping me if I'm wrong.
That's right.
Okay? So we're proving that he can do it, not holding the property anymore. We'll go to the HOA, once they turn it, we'll turn it, and bring it in for permitting, and that's how it will be, you know.
They won't have to come back before the commission, they'll be able to handle something like that.
If they, I hate to be argumentative, but if they change the orientation, it will have to come back before the commission.
No,
Why not?
because we are looking at the architectural design of this, and we talked to we just talked to the.
He said they could put in a change order, but that change order, am I mistaken?
It didn't matter to him one way or the other, the orientation of it.
Okay. I'm misunderstanding.
You're misunderstanding?
I am, because I have a different opinion of what he said. So, Ms. Morales, could you enlighten me or tell me I'm wrong, that's fine. But if they change the orientation after we make this approval, if they do a change order, or I forgot the exact phrase.
Modification.
A modification, if they do a modification, that modification would have to come back to us, would it not?
Yes, it will.
Yes,
Yes, it will.
because the modification would have to go back to the Historic Preservation Board, their approval, and then it comes back, I believe, Aaron, was that? But they can still order, if I may, they can still go ahead and, if it's approved, they can order their building, they can get it manufactured, it's just an orientation thing. So before it gets placed on the site, they could bring that modification in front. And in fact, I've seen it to where they did it and then they went back for a modification. And it was risky, they were taking a chance, but it wasn't a problem. Others have done that way too.
So if it does get changed, it will come back before us. And that's fine. We probably would approve it. It sounds like it's something that would work. And if you're right, Mr. Barrett, it sounds like they're amenable to it. They probably do that. It'll be fairly quick and easy process. Quick by government. And I don't mean to be flippant, it just, everything does take time. So we have a motion to approve 427 West Michigan Avenue, certificate of appropriateness. Any further discussion?
I don't really want to hold off, I think. Roxanne, are you going to have a question about this one?
It was more
I see you filling out the cards.
If you would state your name and address for the record.
Roxanne Goodman, 391 West Michigan Avenue. I just wanted to confirm, because there's been a lot of confusion about the process, and I know that the HOA did come up here to discuss the process and ensure that the homeowners do not have to return when we do not approve something. So based on the discussion that I've heard now, if this shed, when it comes to the HOA, and for whatever reason we don't approve it, and they have to make a modification, it is coming back to the city for approval and review.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I misspoke, I was wrong, that's twice that I've been wrong.
Okay, and so the
One more
conversation.
time, I get to go home.
That's okay. So the conversation that we had previously is that we wanted to minimize that, right? We know that there are going to be instances where we're not going to be able to prove something. And the question, the intent in that discussion was to have something on your approval that said, first, that you have to go to HOA, that you have to get HOA approval and review. And secondly, if we know already now that there's an issue, isn't there a way on your form to put, it's approved with this exception? I've seen them before, where you add it to your approval. It's approved, but you have to do these qualifications.
That can be done. We don't have the homeowner here to make that request.
So that's the issue, is that they're not here.
They're not here.
Okay, so it's going to come to us, we're not going to approve it, and they're going to have to come back to you.
It could go that way, but again, that's not, we can't.
I think the part that I want to, the reason I want to approve it is so he can order it. This is a free manufacturer, correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, but we tell them not to order anything until
I
tomorrow.
understand that, and it's their risk, okay? But it gives them the opportunity to do that, because it's just an orientation. It's nothing.
Well, as you know right now, right?
Yeah.
I haven't seen the application yet, so that's why we always say, do not approve anything until it's approved. So hopefully don't put that on their approval thing. It's gonna be approved from your point of view, but they still have to come to us with it.
You know, it almost seems like, just for process, it seems like it should go to the HOA first.
I think we talked about that.
That's what makes sense to me.
Right.
At least on anything that, you know, goes to the certificate of progress. Because that way, when it comes to the city, for us to
You know
look
we've got our
at,
blessing.
we've already got the stamp on it, and boom.
We did talk about that, I'm not sure where we ended up, Scott, if there was something within the.
I think where we ended up was that they would have to be, they can be told that just because we approve it, you still have to go through HOA approval. So you may want to go get there first before you come to us, but if they come to us with an application and they want to go forward, then we need to review that application. Our codes do not say we don't process an application until you get HOA approval.
So basically, you're saying the homeowner has a choice of where they take it first.
Yeah. And it could be,
Not
it could be either way, because just because the HOA approves it doesn't mean we're going to. And just because the city approves it doesn't mean the HOA approves it. So it's a chicken or egg thing. You run the risk of having to go back, to the previous one anyway.
That's the joys of living in an HOA. I mean,
Exactly.
it's the realities of living in an HOA, is that it adds another layer of reference.
So, the discussion here was, at least from our architectural guy, it doesn't seem like a big deal because it's just orientation. The HOA may say, we don't want the shed at all.
That's right.
That's a different issue. Our issue was orientation, the shed was fine, but the HOA can stop it altogether.
This was one of the reasons why it's important for the applicant to be present throughout the process.
Well, it's easier to make changes. It behooves them to be here. If they want the process to be more expeditious.
Well, we still have before us the request, which we need to either confirm or deny, affirm or deny for the COA. We have a motion to approve it, I believe. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. Okay, so now we're to item E, 128 East Craig Avenue, lot 3.
Did you deal with these all individually?
No, we can look at them all at one time. Because
So basically, 10, okay.
it's basically the same thing on each one.
Okay.
If I have to admit, I delayed looking at this in time, and when I tried to go to look at it, I had no access to my files because we have no power at my house, and no internet or nothing. But if I recall right, our property line distances to the building are 15 or 25 feet, and he's wanting 10 to 0, if I read these drawings correctly. One of them, the one up there on the corner, the overhanging house is actually outside the property line.
Well, we're working on a certificate of appropriateness for the houses, and what you're talking about is where the house is on the lot.
Well, I'm going by what they submitted in the applications. I mean, I'm looking, page 50 is one of them that showed you. Page 50?
Okay, that's right.
That's one of them, and the other one is page 79.
So what is your, I'm not fully aware of what question you're asking. What are you asking?
The other one is on page 63. The proposed buildings and everything they want, I mean, he's trying to reduce the distances between the property line and the houses. And that's going to put us into a Deltona and Elan type building environment. I don't want to see us start allowing close to zero lot line buildings and then be stuck in it.
I'm looking at sheet 78, and I'm looking at all of these houses, all of these lots on here, and I don't see anything that appears to be zero lot line.
Go to 63, and it's got the distance between the lot line and the house. I guess that would be on the north side of the house.
I see
10 feet, 1 inch distance from the property.
the left side seems to be 10-foot 1. The right side, that looks like a typo because it can't be 5 foot.
I know that driveway's got to be.
Driveway's got to be 12 feet anyway.
There's a one.
Front and the back, I don't see anything that's zero. I see 10 feet, 10 foot 1.
Well, I think our distances from the property line are greater than 10 feet.
Well, on front and back typically they may be, but on sides it's usually 10 feet, and you can go as small as 8 if you got 12 on those, I believe. But I don't think we have,
And that's why I wanted to review the codes on it, see what our codes say.
you can, but at this juncture, that's really not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with certificate of appropriateness for the building. When they go to build a building, and they put it on there, it has to meet our requirements. I think if you want to hold off on doing the certificate until you can satisfy yourself,
Be satisfied myself, to me, it's satisfying the codes.
well, I believe it does satisfy them. So you need to satisfy yourself that it satisfies them. Because you think that it doesn't, and I think that it does.
And if I may interject here, but this is a quasi judicial hearing, and not having substantive, what's the phrase? The substantial substantial competent evidence to the contrary, we can't deny based on what we don't know. We have to have substantial competent evidence that it won't work. Is the way that quasi judicial, I'm not being argumentative, that's just where the quasi judicial lands.
When they go to build one, that's when, one of the things that you have to do, I know because I just did it, you have to provide a form board survey, which shows the distance of your floorboard to the property line. You can't pour your slab until you've had that done. So if they go in and it's 6 feet and it calls for 10, they will not get signed off on by the inspector, so they can't. And if they do, you're going to be forced to take it out. So what I'm saying to you is, although it's honorable that you're concerned about it, I personally believe that what you're concerned about is taken care of in the inspection process. And what I'm looking at, it meets the criteria.
Well, as this, and since it's a quasi-judicial thing, and I'm one of 5 judges, do not have enough information, and I will cast my vote as I see fit when it comes time.
Well, that's fair. Of course, absolutely. Wouldn't expect anything less. So are we going to look at these last, each F and G, these last three, Mr. Director, you were saying, are basically the same issue. So we'll, if without objection, we'll consider them as three in one. Is there any further discussion on this?
So I would make a motion to approve certificates of appropriateness as design work, as guided by Mr. Rouse for item E, F, and G, 128 Craig Avenue, lots 3, 7, and 10. Motion to approve.
A motion, do I hear a second? I have a motion from Vice Mayor Passo, a second from Commissioner Bishop to approve the certificate of appropriateness for items E, F, and G, 14 E, F, and G. Any further discussion from the Commission? I've already said it, I don't need to say it again. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. And since beyond record, let's go zone by zone. Zone 1?
Yes.
Zone 2?
No.
Zone 3?
Yes.
Zone 4?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion carries. And thank you, Roger, for sharing those concerns. I do appreciate it. Thank you all. That concludes the quasi-judicial hearing. We move forward to item 15, public forum. I do have several, I have two public forum cards. First one is Kurt Sniffen, second is Ron Perry. Mr. Sniffen?
Kurt Sniffen, 491 West Delaware. I just have a quick question with that vote, quasi-judicial. Don't we swear people in for that? I think that's a very important part in doing it. In any other city I've lived in, when you have something like that, people need to be sworn in when they're testifying. It's actually a testifying moment for it. So just point of order on that. So just if we can double check, so keep everything in checks and balances. The main reason why I wanted to talk tonight, or why I showed up tonight, was going back to the ARPA money. I made a comment about it and nobody wanted to respond to it. And here again, I feel like when we talk about stuff, it falls on deaf ears and nobody really wants to respond to anything like that. Well, kind of, sort of. I mean, I just think that the ARPA money has become a slush fund. I mean, we've got water issues, like I said, that I think are a little bit more important. But one of the other things is, and I was going to speak on it, but I think somebody in the back is going to speak on it, hopefully, because I don't want to use my time. I just ask you all to just pay attention to that money because it's going to be gone. And one suggestion I'd like you all to look at over at Lake Park, one of the fastest growing sports in the community is pickleball. A lot of people, as we get older in age, can't really play tennis as well as we used to. And pickleball is not as strenuous on your joints and stuff. So I would like to see if we can do something with the tennis courts to convert it to pickleball and tennis at the same time. So that's it.
That's a good idea. That is a good idea. I'll come back to that. Like I said, I'll make notes and we'll come back to you. So the next is Mr. Perrick, and then after Mr. Perrick will be Bill Preston. Okay.
Ron Perrick, 451 West Michigan. I stood up here either last meeting or the meeting before and asked why you dug a big hole through our retention pond for the woods of Lake Helen. And you kind of had the impression it was your pond. It belongs to the woods of Lake Helen. Now I see that we have a drainage ditch that was put in, Was that, my question was it engineered? Because what I see, we have a retention drain that drains into our pond. Now, when that pond reaches that level of that retention, or that drain, it's going to backflow through that drain down the street. So, to me, the engineering stinks, because it took away probably half the amount of retention that we can do, and it was designed to hold. And you proved that wrong when you took the canal and put a canal in there and flooded out the Schaefer's house. Because we could have held a heck of a lot more water. The second question is, you didn't ask permission to do it the first time, and now you've done something else to our retention pond without permission from our HOA. I don't understand why you can keep on making the same mistake over and over with no accountability. Because I've already heard that the Schaefers were going to put a lawsuit against the city, now the woods of Lake Helen, because it's our pond. Sorry, it's your pond when you're going to be included. You know, let's get the thing right and follow procedure. And how did we do an engineer study? You didn't do an engineer study the first time when you just took out the dike. So,
Well, may I? No.
Let's let him finish.
So I'm finished. Would you like me to say?
Would you like him to say, or are you going to ask him questions? Or?
No, I'm just going to say, my assessment of the storm drainage problem that was there, that was exacerbating the flooding at Shakers, went all the way back to the original design of the woods. There should have been additional storm drainage inlets at the end of, what is that street that comes down and gets, around the water, to capture that water and put it into the pond from there. But there's several hundred feet from the last catch basin to catch the water that's coming out of the woods. Anything beyond that goes out into the street and you see the design, there was a flaw in the design initially, because that water should have been captured and taken to that pond, not that was. In an attempt to go in and try to provide some relief for the Shakers. And a 4 to 6 inch event, it would not have been an issue. You would have provided with a 12 to 18 inches of rain. Didn't matter what we did, they were going to flood. So it was an attempt. Have you shot the elevation of the overflow orifice going out of the structure?
I drove up there today and looked at it, and there's water inside the drain. It's halfway up the drainage pipe right now. So another, foot of water would be coming back out. You're taking away the. We cannot retain the water that it was designed for.
It's a one-way structure, so it will not backflow.
There's no check on it. There's no check on it.
Yeah, there is.
The answer to your question is yes, it was a stopgap measure to hopefully prevent in a less than 6 inches of rain scenario. Okay. Once again, the 500 flood, we can't control it. It's being engineered properly, and when we get the complete engineering work done, it's going to be one of the projects, as far as I'm concerned, one of the first stormwater projects that we do.
I will additionally say, some of the points you make are very reasonable. We do have rights. Your homeowners association does have rights, and permission is an important part of that process. We have looked at and are doing some research on the original design, and are trying to find out what the original design was, who was responsible for certain things. That's being researched. We're in the process of it. And I say that to say that we will get back on this again, probably at our next meeting, with some additional information for you, and for the community. Because you're right, these are very serious issues. And we are seriously researching them, trying to find out exactly what's right, trying to find out exactly how to proceed with the whatever next changes there are, so that we don't cross lines that we shouldn't cross. So I appreciate what you're saying. You're right on point, and we are looking at it very seriously.
West Michigan, following up on Ron's statement previously. There was work done on a retention pond that is not owned by the city, that is the property of the HOA. There was no previous discussion about the work. While I understand it was a stopgap measure or work that was done, there was still enough time that you could have had a discussion of this. Again, I reached out and asked why this was done, why there was no permission or this continued work. It was engineering done. You've already said that you have ideas as to, why it happened. Still no conversations with the HOA. I have sent an email to Lee asking that no additional work be done on that retention pond. That includes studies or engineering until we are engaged. So I'm just following up on that request.
And that's fair. I appreciate knowing about that. And lost my train of thought. I apologize. I will say, well, that's what I was going to say, that all of these meetings are public, and part of that information is, all of it is available to the HOA. So we're not doing anything, as a commission, we're not doing anything outside of notifying you, because our meetings are notifying you.
Well, and that's fine, but if it was someone was going to come and do work on your house, you would expect for them to come and talk.
Oh, and there are,
To be perfectly honest, I did not know that there was no communication between the city and the HOA.
No.
Because there should have been, and when I was looking at it, I didn't think about it. Typically, most of the streets, retention ponds, and those kind of things wind up being owned by the city, but I don't think in your case it's ever been turned over.
That's another discussion.
So that's the scenario that we're in here, which is different than most cases. So I didn't even think about mentioning it, but I would have thought we would have done that.
Mr. City Attorney, did you want to weigh in on this at all, or you want to save that for the next time when we discuss this, which will be next meeting?
The communication with the HOA is very important. It is their retention pond. It was never intended, based on my review of the development order, to ever be turned over to the city. It was always supposed to be maintained by them. Some of the information we've asked for is, what has the HOA done to maintain this? We're all going to start looking at, okay, who's doing what? All right, tell us what you've done to maintain it. There's things we've asked for. There was an engineering survey that was supposed to be done 2 or 3 years after it was done to show what additional work needed to be done. That was supposed to be submitted to the city. They are annually supposed to submit to us their financial affidavits, so we know how much money they have set aside to do the stormwater maintenance work. We have the ability, if we want to take over the retention ponds if we want. And also what's interesting is, through the reviewing all the documents, the solution, and I would say one thing, when the retention pond was cut, that was immediately, like the day before a hurricane hit. That's a different situation. There were, state of emergency orders put in place, and the authority of a local government to go in to prevent disasters is different when you're in a state of emergency. Like the example I always remember is the Chicago fire. The big, huge Chicago fire. The city went in and destroyed a whole bunch of houses that were in the path of the Chicago fire. And they said, they tried to sue, say, hey, you tore down perfectly good houses. Well, it wasn't going to be. So there's some authority that there is in the first thing we did, but on the second one, when repairing it was okay, but when we added piping, and my understanding piping to add retention, to divert water back into the retention pond, certainly that should have been discussed with them and coordinated with them. I don't disagree with that. But one of the things that is interesting is going through all the history of the letters. I think you can share this information. The solution that we were doing when we were rebuilding the swale with the pipe was something the city recommended or required the developer to do in 2004. There's correspondence to that effect. But there's a void of correspondence between 2005, when they said, well, there was a $77,000 cash bond with the city. They asked for it back. We said, you're not done. And then in 2011, there's a letter from the city saying everything's fine to a new developer, a new person buying. What happened through 2005 and 2011, there's a void, because one of the things we know that didn't happen was the construction that we asked to be done that we were starting to do a couple weeks ago. So that's kind of interesting that independently, apparently, the engineers both said that this is what needs to be done. I understand, I'm not an engineer. They're trying to divert water that is coming out of the woods back into the retention pond. It is my understanding in layman's terms of what the intended improvements were. But I do agree that should have been communicated between the city and the woods. But that will be a discussion. We have a meeting coming up pretty soon where we're going to talk about the roads, and we're also going to talk about the retention ponds.
In addition, the design, when you were saying, well, to reduce the capacity, that's not the case. And the reason for it is the pipe is a flat running over there. In other words, it will allow water to go in. But once the water raises to a certain elevation and it puts hydraulic pressure on it, it closes it and it allows the water to come up in the retention pond and go to the outflow.
But imagine how much angst we could have avoided if that was done.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree.
None of us is.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I think their whole issue is the communication problem. We did improve our communications with
It is significant. Thank you. Now, the next yellow card I have is still to Preston. And Cindy, I'll let you speak now.
That's okay.
But I don't know. Mr. Preston, go ahead.
Evening, Phil Pratt, 390 North High. We're going to beat a dead horse here about the drainage, I get this. But, you know, I've really never been here and talked to any city officials up until last week when we were told that we've assessed the damage and the water, issue in my yard, my neighbors, the Jensen's yard. Nothing was ever done until this week when my neighbor and I bombarded Lee with phone calls every day. And then my biggest problem is if we're going to get told the city's going to do something, why are they not doing it? And it's another excuse as to why they're not going to do it. And another excuse. I think if you're not going to do something, just tell the people, sorry, I'm not going to do anything for you. I think, and I left Lee a voice message on this one, is I don't need you to call me back every day and sing me a lullaby to go to sleep.